first of all, let me start off by saying thank you for welcoming me into this magnificent castle. And I also have to admit that I have never been to the Lake District before.
Haven't lived.
I know.
Western Lake District.
West
is always best.
I did see that sign when I was driving, welcome to the Western Lake District. So thank you very much. And it's beautiful here. Now I know why so many people holiday to the Lake District. I understand, and I'm definitely going to be coming back. So that's my number one thank you. Number two is what a treat to be able to spend the night here in a castle, and reminds me, how old is the castle?
Lots of debate.
Well, the family have been here for at least 800 years, and pretty sure there's a fortification around that time. In fact, we think the castle was built on a Roman foundation. So there's been something here for a very long time. But certainly it was built probably around 1300, the early 1300s.
1300.
But then it's been built onto and built onto.
Yeah, I know.
And they forgot to stop.
Yeah, that's okay. They always are adapting and adapting.
Well, every generation wants to do their own conservatory.
That's exactly right. I know, and I can't wait to talk about
the bit you were staying in is the oldest bit. The date's from around
13th century. Fantastic.
And you can tell because the walls are just so thick, even though it's the 4th floor. You're staying on the top, Ron. You guys have gone for the proper Rapunzel room.
Right. We wouldn't expect anything less. We wanted that too,
Yeah,
but I don't have
the walls
long
even
hair.
on the 4th floor are 8 foot thick, just to keep the Scots out.
Wow. So that's really why it was built, really, to keep...
Yeah, you're in the Badlands now. This is the borderlands between where two kingdoms meet, England and Scotland.
Yes.
The debatable lands. It's where blackmail and terms like that come from, as there was all sorts of shenanigans going on. Perhaps there still are.
Right. I suspect there are. And of course, this was a perfect spot to defend. I mean, and you're close to the sea. It's so quiet. You can't hear a car, you can't hear a plane, you can't hear a train. It's remote and a great spot to defend. So, they were... Your ancestors were clever.
Yeah, it's the one place where the mountains tumble into the sea, so it's a very strategic point.
Yeah.
But also rich in minerals, and even though it's quiet now, it used to effectively be the highway for the West Coast just here, and the river below the castle was the main crossing point, or the main pinch point, which was a hard place to cross because it's a big river, and the castle watched over the ford, the tidal estuary. So if you had this power, then you had power over the local area.
Right.
I don't know if it's true, but Ravenglass is reputed to be the second port to Chester on this coast. Whether that was actually true or not.
In the Roman times.
In the Roman times.
Yeah.
Okay. And I
not lately.
No, and I need to get to Ravenglass. I've heard it's beautiful.
Village of 300 people.
Right, and it's perched on the sea. Is that right?
Yeah, I learnt this week that it had well over 2,000 Romans living there in Ravenglass, and it had loads of works. There was, as Dad highlights, a cavalryman from Syria who settled in this area and married a local.
Wow.
But there was, a battalion, a big Roman fort just a mile away from here.
Okay.
So it was very cosmopolitan in Roman times. It's gone to be a bit of a sleepy backwater since then.
Well, I think but let's talk about that.
Let's make it a centre.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
You're sort of...
This is Dad's...
Exactly. You're rejuvenating this area with what the three of you have done over the past how many years? So I'm going to start, Iona and Peter, with you. Tell me a little bit about when you arrived here, when you took over, how that all happened, what it was like. And you raised your family here as well, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's a lot of questions I just asked you. So I'm sorry.
I was brought up on a farm in Dumfriesshire, so just across, and we used to spend all our summer holidays down with our grandparents here, and there used to be 10 cousins, so it used to be fairly mad.
Right, and fun.
Oh, absolutely. But I think everybody working here used to dread the summer holidays.
Iona was the naughtiest.
Not necessarily. And we always used to go to the beach just about every day.
Right, amazing.
And so we had a brilliant time running around all over the place, and probably being a pain in the neck, actually.
Yeah. So you've just got really fun memories of in your childhood coming here, spending time with all of your cousins, beaching it, just lots of rain as well, I suspect. Good old, but so fun when you're children. You love that.
It doesn't matter, does it?
Exactly, it doesn't matter, splashing around. And then when did you take the reins?
So then my parents took over from my grandparents in 1980.
Okay.
And I went off to Australia for 2 years, and then came back and started taking over in sort of 1982.
Okay.
And
So quite
then,
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my father was in Scotland a lot, and so I gradually took over.
Right.
And
you knew you would be the one taking over. Did you kind of know that growing up or later on in life?
I was the one who didn't step back quick enough.
Right.
I'm number 3.
Oh, right. Okay.
I've got 3 sisters.
Right.
And I'm the third one.
And you're the third one.
And so I just didn't step back quick enough.
Right. Right. And so it landed on your lap, and that was it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I've never gone away again.
Right.
I suppose. So,
And in 82, when you started to sort of look at this place and think, okay, this has landed on my lap, I'm now the one who needs to make a success of this. What was the castle at that time? Was it open to the public? Because, of course, we have, homes started to open up to the public, we know, in the 50s,
Yeah.
right? With Edward Montagu, Lord Montagu of Beaulieu. Historic Houses, the association was then created, a little bit later, not until technically in the 70s. But historic houses, stately homes started to open up the doors to public in order to help,
That's
feed
right.
that cost of repairing the roof or the stonework or the lead windows, what it might be.
I think it was really in the 60s they started opening in a very small way. But what my grandmother did was she had a sort of mini zoo, which at that time was a lot of historic houses
Right.
had. And what happened was sounds a bit strange now, but Harrods used to have a pet shop. And she walked into Harrods and she saw this little bear in a tiny little cage, and it had rubbed its shoulder, and she felt sorry for it, so she bought it.
Right.
And she then, the story is that she put it in a taxi and sent it up to Muncaster. But whether that's true or not,
Right.
I don't know. It sounds very strange.
It's a brilliant
So
story,
anyway,
though.
It came up here, and they had some bird cages and things, so it was in a large bird cage.
Right.
And she felt sorry for it again, brought it a mate. It was called Winnie, and she bought Rupert. And then they did breed quite a lot, and then somebody gave us some more bears, and they used to be quite naughty. They used to escape and eat all the plums.
Really?
They're Himalayan honeys, the one V-neck ones.
Yeah. So bears,
Bears, yeah.
bears.
Yeah, proper bears.
Himalayan moon bears.
You have proper bears here. Mm-hmm. And was that an attraction for people to come in? Was that the point?
Yes, it was. It was. They had a whole lot of a bird garden, so they had flamingos
Okay.
and various
Cirrus
different
cranes
things, and
Storks,
deer and all sorts of things.
wallabies.
Right. So the public started to come.
Yeah, the public came in at that stage.
Right.
And it was, a lot of historic houses did do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We didn't have any lands or anything a bit like
No,
that.
but you had some sort of zoo, if you like.
Yes, and
Okay.
sort of South American rheas, like ostriches, and they used to breed like mad. And they used to escape too. Everything used to escape. Anyway, that was fine. And then my grandparents built a great big sort of bear pit enclosure.
Okay.
And so the bears had a really, really big enclosure.
Okay.
And then we had the bears for a long time, till 1990s, I suppose.
Okay. So so you're married, you've taken over Muncaster as far as managing it.
And Peter's continuing to be a vet.
Okay.
Yep. And then I had Ewan. We
Right.
got married in 1988.
Okay.
And then I had Ewan in 1990. And then Fraser in 1991. And that was getting a bit too much to run the place on my own
Right.
with 2 babies.
Yes, of
So
course.
then Peter went part-time.
I see.
And he'll tell you all about that.
Okay. Well,
And then we had Isla.
and then you had Isla, so you've had 3. And
Hmm.
you all grew up here. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Childhood.
the best time was when we didn't live in the castle. And so to the age of 7, we lived in a house down the road.
Okay.
And that was awesome because there was a bit more work-life separation.
Yes.
The castle was
then-
falling to bits. That's
And
why.
the castle just wasn't child-friendly because there were, over 100 buckets collecting water everywhere.
Right.
And yeah, it didn't look like this. So we were brought up in a nearby house and we had complete freedom then. And then we were brought to the castle, the spooky castle. At the age of 7, our parents
Just
ran off to work
And
every year. Every second
Were you?
year.
Do you remember literally when there were leaks, putting buckets?
Well, we were
everywhere?
particularly small, so
Right.
we could get to places where Mum and Dad couldn't. So I remember crawling into places to be like,
It's like cleaning the chimneys, you know.
Can you put a bucket in there? Is there any drips in there? So I do remember like us crawling around
Finding.
as kids up in the attics.
I found a leak.
things.
Give me a
You
bucket.
don't know the life of living in a castle.
Very glamorous.
And
Cold. Was it cold? Do you remember?
really cold and really scary. So for us, even though I was 7 when I moved here, there was no way that I was going to have my own bedroom. I 100% wanted to be in the same bedroom as my brother and sister.
Yeah.
And we were all on the same page about that. What my
Right.
brother was 6
Until about
and my
18.
sister was 5. More like 19. But, and so we were all terrified because we would come here because our grandparents lived here when we were little. So I do remember occasionally being left, but we would be, in a different room. Whereas coming here for
You
the
were
first
here
time,
all day.
Yeah.
apparently all day, passed around literally every staff member. Like as in, it was particularly awkward now being the boss in theory, and being the boss of people who have literally had me in their hands,
Right.
like looking after me since
Making
the age of 0.
Oh my
and now
goodness.
I'm their boss. Like Murray is
Uncle
the
Murray.
most obvious one.
But the castle, though, I mean, you've got these memories, and this is just brilliant because, of course, many people will think it's just this wonderful sort of gilded Downton Abbey life because of all of those period dramas that are out there. They're like, wow, you grew up in this castle. Look at this view. It's fantastic. But the reality is the maintenance of these places is, of course, one thing. But then on top of that, there's maintenance on one side, but then you've got to look and like, all right, what is my priority of projects of restoration or the big projects, or what needs to get done to make sure that this is preserved for future generations? And again, we're talking about cold, it's leaks everywhere.
Mum's favourite thing to do in all, like, of everything is if there's been a big storm and a drain has been blocked either on the roof or around the garden, and getting our hands in and getting the leaves out. And that satisfying, you've probably all done it, that satisfying moment where you finally get the last chunk of leaks out and then suddenly the water. Just goes and disappears.
Yeah.
That is the thing that drives Mum. I kind of have a little bit of a... I quite like.
I've done it.
I kind of satisfy.
I've saved the
I also
castle.
find it quite satisfying. You just hope there's no dead bird that's the thing that's like blocking the drain.
Exactly.
Nice and right.
Yeah.
But
But so fast forward, I think, to, again, you've taken it over, you've got young children, you're here, times are moving on, and you're thinking, okay, I mean, because this is a big castle, this is a big fortress, this is not a small manor house. It's a lot of maintenance. What were some of the difficulties, besides maybe the leaks and, sort of, I think the leaks is probably the big one, of working out a way to make this commercially viable? Because the zoo, it sounds like, was sort of done.
Well,
what were you thinking creatively?
It was the zoo was costing a lot.
Yeah.
And everything was costing a huge amount. A lot of land and anything that brought an income had been sold off, really.
Right, yes.
Which was a bit of an issue, really. And so it was really trying to stop the outgoings going out and to try and increase the number of visitors and how we'd get more money in.
Yes.
And at that time, we actually used to do at-home country houses, so we used to have people to stay.
Right.
But it was quite difficult because it was quite cold.
Yeah.
So the summer used to work quite well. My father used to take them around the Lake District and show them various things, which used to...
Right, yeah.
But the zoo didn't vanish. The zoo, we evolved the zoo to being fairly mishmash, to specialising, and we developed an owl centre. So it had always primarily been a bird garden with some mammals besides. So we rehomed to various other zoos the mammalian collection.
Yes.
And we set up the world's first dedicated owl centre, and we just had owls, and that was very popular became even more so when Harry Potter hit the screens.
Of course.
Because owls were often seen as birds of ill omen and creatures of the night. And we further developed that in 2015 to adding more birds of prey to being the Hawk and Owl Centre. And that has been, as you'll see later, the core of a lot of, and very much conservation based, and not just having animals here to entertain people. We've always been conservation based, but we had a definite change of emphasis in the early 90s to go very, or late 80s to go conservation based, and we're continuing with that now. And we had to sort the castle out, and Ian did an absolutely brilliant job we needed to re-roof the castle,
right.
and we managed to just roll up our sleeves, and with Iona leading from the front with her parents, being prepared to do anything, and then we managed to raise some funds and some grants, and had to sell some of the family silver
to re-roof
to
it.
nail our colour to the mast, say we are here and we are going to make a go of this, and people came on board and helped us out.
And the roof is it's what we all talk about. You know, if you don't have a good roof in place, you don't have a castle. That's it. You have to.
Yeah, the roof and the sewers.
Yeah. Yes.
We got a structural report done, I suppose, in the 90s.
In the mid-90s.
Mid-90s, which said if you do nothing, it'll be unlivable in
2 years. And a ruin in 10.
Right.
That was really we knew we just couldn't go on. We knew we had to, it was death or glory. We had to stop fiddling around and nail our colours to mast, say we are going to make a go of this, we're going to raise money, we're going to do this and do it properly, rather than make, do and mend. And so in the late 90s, we had what we called the Millennium Project, and we managed to re-roof the castle, add in, more modern facilities and a basic heating system.
And what's the material on the roof? I haven't yet seen
it. It's lead and slate.
Okay,
it has to be, a grade 1 listed
lead
building, as
lead.
and it has to be done in traditional materials.
Great expense there.
Yeah.
Lake District, slate.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
With the Millennium Project, we went on occupation of 1,000 years, Roman, and gene
2,000 years.
Gene pool for for rhododendrons and plants,
right,
and also for birds, for owls.
Right.
So those were the 3 strands we went on, and they gave us some money.
Yeah,
nice,
very nice. Which is so helpful.
And we wanted to make the 3 we were going sensitive, sustainable, and beneficial. So whatever we did had to be beneficial to modern day society. People needed to want to buy into it. It had to be sensitive to the surroundings, the landscape, and the buildings and the history, and it had to be sustainable. Ideally, we want to be able to look after ourselves,
of course,
and ploughing any income back into the place to help it grow stronger and be here for future generations of visitors to enjoy, not necessarily the family, because it's a fabulous, beautiful place, and we love sharing it with people. But we've got to make money somehow. So it's getting that balance right between opening our gates and providing something that people want to buy, if you like, and being part of the community, because these places have always been core to the community, and this was originally to protect the community from rampaging Scots.
Exactly.
And it was emphasised to us, the main thing you have to do is employ people. That's the main benefit, and we're very pleased that we've grown the number of people that work with us to probably the most has ever been here.
Yeah, amazing.
But you do, well, you'll know, you get a sort of thing where it owns you, you don't own it.
Exactly right. So you're living where you work.
Yeah.
So you made that decision, right, we have got to make sure that this is preserved. We're going to do it.
We're going nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
We're quite determined, really.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm going to shift a little bit to Ewan now. So Ewan kind of comes of age and goes off to Edinburgh, Cambridge, America.
I mean, I do think all along I've thought it was really important that all the children went away and
made their own lives.
Yes.
Right.
And learnt about other things, because there's no point, being here the whole time and just having our views and everything.
Right.
Because then you can't move on.
Right.
Even if it's hard work moving on.
But did you feel that Ewan growing up, did you feel that this was something that you wanted to take over, or has it just been a recent revelation? You went off, you lived your life, and and then you come back and you thought, okay, I'm going to do it as well. Roll up
Your
my
mother's
sleeves.
going to tell you the answer
Apparently, my
there.
parents answer every question for me. So
No, I'm going to answer
carry
that.
on.
No, can I just say
She's like,
something?
"Mum-"
Because it wasn't necessarily going to be Ewan.
Right, so that was going to be a question. I wasn't sure I could ask that, but I am asking that now if you've prefaced that. Because, of course, you're the third daughter.
Yeah.
So you don't have primogeniture.
No.
Right, so how did that work?
So
Yeah, that's...
it wasn't necessarily going to be Ewan, but it was a discussion between all three of them.
Right.
And
Okay.
so Ewan, Fraser and Isla discussed it and said, well, you can do it.
Right.
Don't
But
make
don't
a hash,
make a mess of it.
because we're right here and we're watching.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I think externally people assume, because I'm the oldest,
Yeah.
that I'm going to take over. And so you get this weird mix as someone like in the family, we would never be like, oh, well, it's obviously going to be you. But then on the outside, you get this weird kind of people treat you as if it's going to be you.
Yeah, due to primogeniture, I think people make that
People
assumption.
just assume, and I'm the best looking, and like the most sophisticated, and you know, like just naturally kind of.
Your siblings are going to love watching this back.
Well, they know it. It's a fact. I mean, it's not even disputed these days. Like, but
We don't have
Can I
favourite
get them on
children.
the phone?
no, but it's more. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing, isn't it? Being born into a stately home,
Yeah.
and the psychology of it, and going to school locally. Like quite often, people go to school far away, so they don't
Yes.
have the association, which I can see there's a lot of merit to, because I was definitely like the castle kid at school, as was my sister.
Right.
And so, like getting that separation of you, finding out who you are, versus like having the castle define you is
Yeah.
quite a challenge. And yeah, for me, that liberating moment at age 18, going away from here and not
Escaping.
telling anyone that I live in a
Exactly.
castle was like awesome. That was so fun,
Right.
because you could detach and be like, oh, actually, I'm a cool, good-looking person, separate. I don't know why I think I'm good-looking. I'm not actually that narcissist. But more just like develop your own personality and character completely separate from that. And what I discovered in having left the castle, I don't know, you never know how much being brought up in a tourist attraction or castle defines you, but I'm a massive extrovert. I love talking to people and get excited to meet new different people from all different cultures,
Right.
backgrounds, whichever, and have a genuine interest in heritage, landscapes. I mean, my career very much took me on the route of energy and
Yes.
low carbon energy and science and those sorts of things. But it kind of, I had about 15 years away from the castle where my identity was, like as in my colleagues, when I told them in San Francisco that I had to go home I didn't
Run a
have to
castle?
go home. I was
Yeah.
going home, and my next career move, like they were genuinely shocked, because
You hadn't told
half
them.
of them like had worked with me for years, but didn't know that I lived in a
brilliant.
castle,
Yeah.
which is just like
Yeah,
nice. Which
nice.
is really weird for me now, because I've now had 2 years where I've got to flip, because my entire job is talking
promote.
about the
The castle.
castle.
Yeah.
So I now, like, I kind of hate myself sometimes, because I now have to be like, hi, yeah, I'm Iona Frost-Pennington from Muncaster Castle.
Castle.
Whereas the Ewan before would have died.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
would have
like,
just been like,
I'm from the Lake
"Oh."
District.
Like, and I hate it when, like, as in,
You get pigeonholed as soon as someone thinks
yeah.
you live in
you
a
do.
castle.
Yeah, and then
And
there's
so
all these sort of assumptions that you know are being sort of created within the mind of the person you're speaking to
but
as
then
soon
it's
as they hear that.
it's really weird, because it is like your job and your like as in, I'm honoured to live in the castle, but a lot of the downside of that is that kind of you lose a little bit of yourself, and you are part of the castle.
Castle.
Like as in,
Yeah, you're owned.
Yeah.
it's immersive, kind of.
It's hard to switch off.
You keep the castle alive, like
Yeah.
as in, and what I do feel very passionate about, and why I ultimately decide, like Mum and Dad did definitely not tied my hands and said, right, you're coming back to help. It was actually my little sister that phoned me up and was like, Mum and Dad are struggling, you need to get back there now. Like they are getting old, Ewan. They are getting really old. as time.
She's in trouble. Maybe you're not.
And so she was like, yeah, because she came back for 2 years.
She came back first. She came back from COVID and landed just before COVID. She came back from the Middle East.
Nice.
Right.
And then she worked here, and she was absolutely brilliant. In fact, she's probably much better than Ewan running
Right.
this
So
place.
you're kind of hoping she would have
But
taken it
then
over?
she fell in love and went off somewhere else and
She
decided
matched with
to
a guy
step
on
back.
Tinder, like 2 hours away, and then suddenly...
She's gone.
Suddenly
No,
the deal
she
with the
doesn't
castle
mind.
was
She's
off.
very proud of the fact that, like,
Yeah.
her first ever Tinder match was this amazing farmer.
Right,
who
who
lives down
she's
the
married
road.
to now. Yeah.
Yeah, both my brother and sister found their future partners
This is
on
not an
Tinder.
advert
Oh
for
my gosh, I'm
Tinder,
going to tell
Ewan.
my children this, that
Yeah.
it really works.
Yeah, apparently.
Wow. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation.
Hasn't worked for you yet.
Hasn't worked for me. I have to caveat that.
So you come back here, and now you've got Castle attached to your last name. You know, you're sort of Ewan Frost-Pennington at Muncaster Castle. That is your title. But you then decided to really, with your education, and presumably the education that you did all about sustainability, environment, you knew that there was something you wanted to apply from that education to here at the castle. Is that correct? And tell me a little bit about that.
And so I think the real reason I came back ultimately, there's a whole host of reasons, family, etc. But one thing was I'd kind of got to the point in my career where I was like, I'm like getting higher up in a company. I was a consultant. I've got really good clients. They're really big, well-known companies, and I'm having a lot of fun and learning a lot doing it.
And you're in San Francisco.
And I'm in San Francisco, which was quite fun.
Yeah.
But then the challenge with it was that, and I kind of saw that route of where I was going, but quite often things would take forever to get done, and because you're a small cog in a big thing. Whereas I'd phone up and say, look, Mum, ground source heat pump's the way to go because I've been doing that on one of my projects. It makes a lot of sense, but doing it at the castle, we should do it. And she's just like, sure, why not? And within 6 months, it's done. We've installed it. We've been through the agility of we've kind of got a big fancy company to come and tell us how to do it, and they gave us a figure we could never afford. And then we've been like, how can we do it differently? Brought on board our local plumber, brought on board our electrician, kind of been agile with it, really thought about it, and within 6 months it's done. Whereas
you got ground source heating into the castle.
Yeah.
Wow. By the way, just a real quick moment here. When I walked in last night to the castle, kid you not, the first thing I said was, it's really warm in here. But so you did that within 6 months. Prior to that, what was what? Exactly.
I did all of the case, etc., and then kind of said we should do it, and then it's just go. And I think that's the thing about Muncaster, because we've had such a finite resources in the past, and we've had to move so quickly to keep it going, and that it's been Mum and Dad working 7 days a week for the last 30, 40 years. It's just kind of in the instinct that if you make a decision, you do it, and you do it quick, and you have to move quickly, because otherwise, as you say, you might lose the roof, or something big's going to happen, and you have to do everything full bore.
You keep it as local as possible.
And keep it as local as possible. Jobs.
And this lady is very impatient.
It's all done through personal relationships. Is one of my challenges now, like stepping in, because there's two of them. They've had 40 years of personal relationships running this place with long-standing staff, and then I'm coming in trying to grow it so that and
shake it up a bit.
Those personal relations, you can't run a business purely on personal relationships when it gets over a certain size.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges that I have now, taking over from them.
So you came in, you did ground source heating, but you've also, that is what you're looking at. You're looking at how can I make my castle, and I'm going to say this, but net zero. Really is, and it's a lovely term, and I know it sometimes gets used very loosely, but really that was one of your goals. Is that right?
One of the things it's even more than that, net positive, which is so not only are we having no impact on the natural environment,
you're putting back into the grid.
Contributing in a positive way to the area in terms of environmental nature, etc. which I know you're on the same thinking. So, but yeah, so that really excited me that you could get something done.
Yes.
And it's definitely been like that. When I came back, I was hoping to do 1 to 2 days a week at Muncaster. And then
Your dad's laughing, Peter.
God.
Well, it's it's very similar to Ewan's experience, because I'm a vet, and I was, in those days, I was working 1 in 2. So
Right.
most of the time I was on duty, and every second night of every second weekend. I couldn't understand when I married Iona just how all-encompassing it was. And you're on a 1 in 1 here. And it's extraordinary. And as you've probably noticed, Ewan and I do most of the talking, but it's a very matriarchal society. Iona does most of the work. She just gets on with it. And that was like the same with her mother and her father.
Right.
Her father wouldn't do lots of talking. Her mother was the core of the place. And she was one of 4 daughters. It was her castle, and she did most of the work. And the blokes just talk about it. So Iona just gets on and does stuff. But it's something that you'll know. I mean, you've also kind of married into this situation.
Yes, I have.
And until you're actually there, you can't explain to anyone. People ask me, what do you do all day? And you sort of go into goldfish mode and go, and you say, well, if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. And they think you're living this life of Riley, and it's all gin and tonics and reading the newspaper.
Some people ask me, well, tell me what a typical day in the life is at
there's no
Mapperton.
typical
And I'm
day.
like, really? There's no typical day in the life.
It's very like being a vet, because the phone rings and there's another disaster happen and
That's
needs
exactly
sorting.
right.
And you have to fix it. And
Right.
that's how
Yes.
Iona's brilliant at it, because she flashes her eyes and talks to people and gets things done. And no, you use your... and we're a very good partnership, even though we bicker all the time, because...
Brilliant. That's what makes the partnership even stronger.
She'll go and do the work, and I'll talk about it.
Yeah. It's wonderful, though, to see just the three of you sitting here and just kind of talking about the past sort of 50 years, if you like, going back to your grandparents when we started in the 80s, and to where we are now. And you're still running it. So I'm going to ask you this. You're running it kind of together, right? How's that relationship going?
It's marvellous. I'm number 3 now. I could just sit back and watch a ping pong match between these two.
But how has it been working together? And I guess the reason I'm asking this question is because Ewan is, he's 30. What are you? Late 20s?
No, 34. You know the way to my heart.
Okay.
I did go to the Turkish barber yesterday, so maybe that's helped.
Early 30s, this new generation that's coming in, the next gen, as we like to call it through historic houses, the next gen coming in full of ideas, and also, again, thinking about the future, right? What can I do to preserve this for future generations? How can I get the visitor numbers up? How can I do events? And then, of course, you've been here running it for 30, 40 years, and you're thinking, oh gosh, what is it going to cost?
This young whippersnapper.
Is he going to be able to do it? How is it going to work? Is it financially going to make sense? So have you had a little bit of that sort of back and forth when he comes to you with a sausage festival idea? Was that your idea or no?
It was that. Well, Mum and Dad's actually, and then I just brought it back to life. They killed the sausage, I brought it back to life. Because it was too good to ruin.
And now you've grown it, and you must be quite pleased with that.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's that circle of life thing. And I see Ewan being very similar to when I was given the opportunity to come here and work with Iona, trying to explain to my parents-in-law that we were going to have a Fool's Festival. And I think they wanted opera and Shakespeare and things like that. Yeah. We were going... and we just came up with wacky ideas. And Ewan's doing exactly the same. And reinventing things and coming up with totally new ideas, but also embellishing what we've done in the past. So taking something like Halloween and making it bigger and better.
Right.
But it's a very productive process. It's very difficult at times because it's family.
Yes,
but family
exactly.
pull together, and we fight like cat and dogs and argue things and stuff. But it's great having, shall we say, a benign dictator who has our hearts are all set on the place. No, we're not very.
She's 100% a dictator. But I don't know how benign she is sometimes. Oh my
But we don't
word,
have to go through committee after committee.
That's exactly right.
As Ewan said, it's brilliant because if we come up with a harebrained idea, we might get through. But sometimes we might go, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it was the same with me and my parents-in-law. They'd sometimes go, oh, OK, try it.
Let's try it.
So
it's
we did
trial and error.
And it must be so frustrating in other people working other jobs when you just
You've got to go through the red
tape. The red tape.
And that is about a thing about most privately owned historic houses that are open to the public. There's not as much red tape. There's not as much bureaucracy. You sort of just have to be like, Mom, Dad, can I sit and have a chat with you? This is the idea I'm thinking about. Okay, let's talk through it. Go for it. or don't.
Oh,
No,
don't.
it's, yeah, I mean,
You're doing what?
Yeah, yes.
it's very weird having come. So my previous company had 16,000 employees, and then coming from that structure, I worked for them for 8 years, into this, and like I think my first meeting where Iona, as I call her in business, but Mum and I had a meeting where we disagreed strongly on something. It was like.
Were plates being thrown.
I was
smashed
like, this
against the wall.
lady's never going to talk to me ever again. Like, she hates my guts. And tell you what, I hate her guts. Like, she's so wrong. But the reality was, it's just so much more raw. Like, as in,
Yes.
of course, in my previous job, we would have disagreements, but it would be far more civil. It'd be like, no, I think that we should do it this way. And the other person would be, it's like,
No,
you're an idiot. You're the one that's going to spend all the money, aren't you, Ewan? Then you're that generation. You're a disaster. You're like, I can't believe you even suggest such a thing.
I'm not quite as bad as the matriarch.
Anyone like watching on the side,
wonderful.
but like sidelines would be like, wow, they really never going to talk to you again. This is a disaster. Whereas like the great thing about Mum is like she does dust off that meeting. He was so wrong, the idiot.
Right.
And then she'd be like, do you want scrambled eggs? Like, do you want hot chocolate?
Well, you
Ewan?"
have to, don't you?
And I find that hard because I go from being like the general manager of Muncaster Castle to being like
The
a
6-year-old
14-year-old. Oh yeah, Mum, please. No, I'm not going to do the dishes. Dad, like I did them last week, and it's just like the hardest, like mind jolt to get yourself into.
It's wonderful to see this dynamic. So I want to end with just one last question, and I don't know how contentious this question will be, but
Who's in charge?
but when you look at Muncaster right now and where it's going, where do you want to see it in the next? I'm just going to do 10 years from now. You know, I'm not going to go that crazy long term, but just give me 10 years. Where are you hoping it will? What will it look like? What are you hoping more of, or maybe less of?
Me or
No, it'll have to be you. 'cause
well, I mean, for me, it's all
Peacock's
like
retired, and
I'm hoping to not have to put so much blood, sweat, and tears into Muncaster on a daily basis that we currently have to do as a family. Like the dependency, like it's a family subsidy essentially that keeps this place going. And that's Mum and Dad having sacrificed weekends, evenings, any form of social life really for the last 30 years. And I don't want to be in that position. So I'm all about empowering the rest of the team to not only have the responsibility, but also the opportunities. And at the moment we can be, as a family, can be quite a bottleneck for things because we're the only ones that can get things done. And what I'm passionate about is building that that balance between pure family does literally everything.
Yes.
But then you don't want to go so big that it becomes heartless and it's not a family organisation.
Exactly.
And getting that balance right and having a healthy, basically, community around it that means that it is sustainable and we're not worried that if I'm ill or Mum's ill or whoever's ill that the place is really under threat. We've got a far bigger, stronger community that thrives and loves and celebrates this place accordingly. So I mean that's like a general view, but then from a kind of what will it be doing? Like I think for me, Dad's thing has always been about the ghosts of Muncaster. I don't like the narrative of ghosts in Muncaster because for me, stately homes have this, in Britain especially, have this perception of being spooky. And it makes so much sense because 100 years ago after World War II, or World War I even, the servants left and never came back. And so this place used to have 50 people living in it. It used to be a buzz of energy, excitement, 20 people coming here on a regular basis for dinners and everything. People really enjoying these spaces. Whereas they're perceived as being spooky now because they're kind of empty and not used that often. Like we're open 12 till 4. Whereas what really excites me is this idea that it is a buzz of energy. There could be more people staying in the castle. It's alive. There's it's celebrated. It's all
bringing energy back into the castle.
And like I love it at night when I see part of the castle with the lights on and people doing, like the family doing stuff. I think it'd be great for all the lights on to be on in the castle and because the favourite time for me growing up was Christmas, where the rest of the family, extended family, would come, and we'd have 25 people here
Yes,
for dinner.
so it was
and
filled.
we'd use it
Yeah.
properly, and it would be a buzz of energy. There'd be like, I don't know, hide and seek going on. There'd be an argument going on in the kitchen, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
There'd be other people bitching about, that dodgy uncle, and it's like human, and
Right,
but it's
yeah.
like contributing to the fabric of these places moving forward, and
Yeah.
that energy. And I think and I say it's not just family I want to be using. It's the general people
Yeah,
that
people
can
coming
have,
and
it-
experiencing this and creating memories within the castle
Yeah.
that you're just talking about, you've created with your family over that Christmas period, having groups come in and they're creating a special memory here at Muncaster.
And it's testament to celebrating the craftsmanship. Like, this room is insane. Like,
Yeah.
you walk around it with one of our carpenters who's incredibly skilled, and he'd be like, that would literally take me my entire life of training to work out how to do that. And lots of that skill,
Yes.
it needs to be enjoyed rather
Yeah.
than
If you look
just
up,
looked at.
that one of our apprentices put the stars on there and worked out where they were when we got the charter in 1208.
No.
So
The Knights Carriage,
we did
of
that
course.
about, 7 or 8 years ago? I
Wow.
suppose?
2019.
Yeah,
2019.
Yeah, it was
It's
before
lovely.
that.
I did an Instagram shot of that. So
That's great,
Yeah.
isn't it?
That was a very long answer from you, and I would say
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, it's
in 10 years' time, I'd like these are living places where honouring the past but looking to the future, and for them to be loved, lived in and cherished. That's what we want to see, hale and hearty, and being used and being enjoyed by many people, not just, where Iona has a very good term of saying, we don't own Muncaster, Muncaster owns us. And Ewan's quite right, we're going to shuffle off before so long, but the tradition goes on, and I think we'll now be part of the tradition. But these places are always built for the new technology and new ideas, new culture, new arts, new ways of looking at life, and often they've become kind of fossilised. And Ewan is obviously full of energy, full of life, and he'll take it into the future with us, supporting him and hopefully slipping off into quiet retirement.
I'm so glad you were even more concise than me, Dad. Dad and I are renowned for being really good and concise and not verbose at all.
No,
Right.
absolutely.
Brilliant.
Well, I'm very verbose.
No, fantastic. Thank you. This has been a real highlight of mine, just sitting, not just as a historic house owner myself, but just the camaraderie and the energy between the three of you. And there's a few other adjectives I could use as well, but I'll hold off.
Maybe a good idea.
But thank you. And I can't wait to get a tour of the house.
Yeah, let's get into the
go.
tour and
You could have three
celebrate
versions.
Right,
Yeah.
and maybe
Totally different
Yeah, and maybe
versions.
some
They'll be different.
scrambled eggs too.
Yeah,
Hot chocolate's better.
yeah. Mum does do a good hot chocolate, actually.